everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Office Hours. This is episode number 64. Come on in. Put your butt in the proverbial seat. The imaginary seat. It's not a real seat. Maybe you're standing. Maybe you're watching this on a bus. Maybe you're hiding in a closet somewhere, hoping that I will advise you before you return to your game to deal with those players that are bothering you. Maybe you've been waiting with bated breath for me to answer your question. How is that possible? How can you ask questions of me? How could you be that game master? Well, let me tell you. The way to get involved with Office Hours is you go ahead and you bring up your computing device and you navigate your computing device to www.adam-koble.com. Once that page loads, you're going to find a link. It says Office Hours. So you can click that link. After that, there's a form. Now, I want to talk for a second about that form. So in the last episode, this is a slight digression. In the last episode of Hot for Teacher, the slightly sexier companion show to Office Hours, I made notice of an interesting gender disparity between the people that ask questions for Office Hours and the folks that ask questions for Hot for Teacher. Now, while the folks that submit questions to Hot for Teacher seem to be across the gender spectrum, the people who ask questions in Office Hours tend predominantly to be men. It's always been really important for me to show people of any gender that they can play role-playing games, and that your gender shouldn't be a gateway, a stopping point between you and game mastery. And I think that there's a lot of work that we can do in the hobby to encourage women and non-binary folks to get more involved, to take up the mantle of game master. And I've always tried to make sure to answer questions from those folks, right? I try to prioritize those, make sure those voices get heard. But after I pointed that out on Hot for Teacher, what was interesting was that I had a couple of people, non-men people, email me to say that for various reasons, they hadn't submitted questions because they didn't feel comfortable recording their voice, which I thought was really interesting. And because this is a thing that sometimes happens where if something doesn't necessarily affect or bother or get in the way of you personally, you can be invisible. You can miss out on it. And so it wasn't something that ever really occurred to me that recording your voice might be a barrier to entry. So I've mentioned before that if you submit a question to Office Hours, the voice that gets recorded doesn't have to be your voice. You could get someone else to do it for you. But if you're feeling like that's too much work, if you don't want to have to ask someone else to do it, just please submit the question anyway. And just let me know in the question text like, hey, Adam, I didn't really feel comfortable recording my voice for this question. So I will be your stand-in. I will read it for you like I do on Hot for Teacher. Please do not let that be a barrier to your question asking. It's important to me that you get a chance to interact with me in that way and to use this platform. So if that's something that's been an issue for you, if you've been holding off, please hold off no longer. Go ahead, submit your question, and I will record the voice for you. I will just read your question on air. That's okay. All right? Just a quick question clarification, quick procedure clarification before we get started. Today we're going to answer some questions about game mastering. That is the thing that we do here. I've got 3 hot questions straight out the proverbial oven, ready to subject you to. And speaking of questions from people who are not men, let's begin with a question from Sam.
Hey Adam, I'm calling in to ask, how do you handle a player with low confidence in their ideas? For context, I play with a group that meets maybe once a month to do one-shots in various systems, or at least try to. We all have other groups elsewhere and people pop in and out, when they're available. It's nice to do something low commitment once in a while. I'm usually the GM, and I run into a problem with one of my fellow players. She comes up with great ideas, wonderful ideas, interesting characters, etc., but I have to gently dig them out of her through about 20 layers of anxiety. She'll say, oh, I don't know if this is any good, never mind. And I'll say, no, say what's on your mind. Your ideas are good, I believe in you. Under no circumstances will I tell you something you're thinking is stupid, and thereby crush what little confidence you have underfoot. the other players make a point of stepping up to tell her her ideas are good as well, I don't think they're the problem. I understand where she's coming from, however. As women, everything in society tells us that not only are our ideas stupid and trivial, we're stupid and trivial too. And I know it's not really within my purview or my ability as GM to fix her confidence. That's for therapists. I'm not her therapist. However, I was wondering, as a kindly pink-haired man on the internet, if you had any advice for creating an atmosphere at the table where she feels more safe and more comfortable just throwing things out there. Thanks.
So, Sam, I think you're already on target about the boundaries of your responsibilities here, which I think is really good. The flip side of that adversarial game master myth, right? The flip side of the GM that's a real tyrannical jerk is the hyper responsible game master, right? That's the other side of that mythology, right? The GM that feels it is necessary to be mom or dad to their players, right? The GM that feels like it's their responsibility to create a space in which everyone feels comfortable and safe, and that the GM takes that on themselves, right? Like, obviously, both a degree of understanding roles and performing them, and a degree of being open and flexible and gentle with folks, those are all important in being a good player, right? A good co-creator with other people. But you can't, Sam, or any other game master, you cannot be the sole person handing out the crayons and safety scissors and having to adult the rest of the group, right? This doesn't just come up in terms of Sam's particular issue, but generally, I think we can get into these positions where, either by way of the game master or by way of the player's behavior, we all look to the GM as sort of kindergarten teacher for handling and managing us, right? Ultimately, I'm a huge advocate for recognizing that the people that we play role-playing games with are people, and treating players as people means recognizing their personhood and their ability to handle their own stuff, right? Finding the balance between saying, my job is to be here to support you and to engage you and to make you a better person, right? Balance between that and fuck you, figure it out yourself, is a part of being a good person to engage with, above and beyond being a good game master. And it becomes clearer, I think, during role-playing sessions, right? I think that a lot of this inherent social stuff can bubble to the surface when we play RPGs, right? Negotiating inherent social roles that develop at the table, they get pronounced inside the GM-player relationship because it's perceived in so many ways as both hierarchical, though it isn't really, and because it's made up of really clear, obvious behaviors, right? A group of people sitting around a table at a restaurant having a conversation, the hierarchy is subtle. It is loosely enforced. It is societal and emotive, and it is built on unspoken cues. A group of people sitting around a role-playing table have much, much clearer defined social responsibilities to one another, both directly stated in the book, in the rules of the game, and inferred from our understanding of what a game master is. And so I think sometimes we can go, I don't want to say too far, but we can swing the other direction from the game master is a jerk who's out to get me to the game master is the person who is supposed to be responsible for my fun. And if we take it upon ourselves to believe that the GM's role is to make sure that everyone has fun, for example, and let me just say, that's a piece of advice I see a lot, and I fucking hate it. I hate when people say the GM's job is to make sure everyone has a good time. That is not the GM's job. The GM's job is to do what the game tells them to do. And then we all have a job as a player to take care of and handle each other, but I'll get to that. If we take it upon ourselves to believe that about our role, that it's our job to make everyone have fun, we begin to believe that if a player is unhappy at the table for any reason at all, it falls on us as the game master to fix it. This philosophy and the awkward praxis thereof can lead us to a place as game master where we play moderator to our players' arguments. We play counselor in their relationships, both imagined and real. And, as Sam astutely pointed out, we can be forced to act as therapists when they struggle with things. Now, I'm very much in favor of people who are friends supporting each other. But let's take a minute to look at and understand the somewhat paradoxical relationship that we have with our players, right? So there are, as with any set of identities and relationships between people, intersections that exist between things. My players and I have a player-game master relationship in which the game and our consent to its rules dictate the stuff that goes on in that relationship. We have a person-to-person relationship in that we treat each other with a baseline level of respect and care and dignity that any person ought to afford another, whether or not they just rolled another fucking 20, and I'm pretty sure that your interpretation of how smite dice works isn't really all above board, but you know what? You're a person, and as such, I will treat you with dignity and respect. We have relationships as specific identity interactors too, right? Like my relationship with Andrew is informed by the many years that we've known each other. My relationship with JP is informed by our business connection, right? We have relationships outside the game as people. So it's like game master player, player, person. There's a lot of stuff going on that builds a relationship there between two people, and we can't separate those. These multiple layers in a relationship all interact and inform all the other relationship layers. You can see this stuff happen when in-game arguments bleed into real life, right? Where one character gets in a fight with another character, and then those two players basically stop being friends, right? Or, alternately, great example, Sam Strippin and I have a much better personal relationship with Sam because of the relationship between Gallahan and Dr. Grigori, right? Our playing together helped us bond as people and get to know each other. This kind of stuff is all normal, and it's completely unavoidable. And if we're able to do so, it should be the kind of thing that we're able to address when it's appropriate. I would like to believe that we live in a world where we can all be adult enough to just discuss this stuff. So, to that end, I think that Sam is on the right track, in so much as she said, it's not my job to make this person more confident. And you recognize the group doesn't seem to be the problem, which, Jesus, that can absolutely be a problem. You can have a group that's very bad at encouraging other people to come up with stuff. I'll tell you a story about this later. But in a lot of cases, I feel like this problem that Sam is having may not actually be a problem at all. So I'm going to go ahead and answer that as the first option. I'm going to posit that maybe, Sam, there isn't a problem here. Because really, who is being harmed in this case by this person's lack of surety, right? Is your group complaining? Are people coming to you and saying, like, this indecisive person just can't commit to the narrative. I'm having a hell of a time playing with them. I mean, you didn't mention that, so I can't assume that they are. Are you feeling annoyed You didn't sound like it. You sounded like you really wanted to help them. Seems like it's not really bothering you. Is it slowing down the game? Is it causing dissent in the ranks? I feel like this question is addressing a variable without giving me the whole equation to work with, right? Player X is having a hard time being confident. GM Sam feels the need to address it, but there's the friction in the middle that I don't actually see what it is. So I don't know. Is there one? Without getting too hypothetical, which I'm going to have to do, I feel like this might be the case of low engagement player style. And I want to give you a tool, okay? Game Masters, get ready. This is a tool, really simple litmus test that you can use to find out if your player isn't engaging on purpose because they prefer a more casual connection to the game, okay? So really easy test, really simple trick. You can usually do it in just a couple of minutes. Here's what you do. You ask them. You just say, hey, it seems like you're having a hard time jumping in with the creative stuff. It's really cool when everyone's contributing ideas, and that's kind of the sort of game that we want, but it feels like you're not into that as much. Am I reading that right? Just ask them. And then have that conversation. And what they may end up doing or saying to you is, I don't know. It's fine. Everything's fine. I'm having a fine time. They may lie to you. I hope your friends don't lie to you, but I can understand why in this case they might. But they might also say, I don't really feel all that hype about world building or in-depth stuff. I just want to hang out and roll dice. Like, y'all want to talk about the ancient kingdom of elves or like describe your character's emotional. I just want to do it. I just want to do the game. I just want to play the game. I just want to roll the dice and take my turn and then drink a beer and eat these delicious pretzels. If that's the case, let it be, right? They deserve to engage in this game in the way that is comfortable and fun for them. But if it's really fucking with your game and your group's play style, you're going to have to play a different game, or you're going to have to change the group structure to better fit this person's place in the group, or you're going to have to ask them to leave. So I'm not really sure what the problem is necessarily. Now, let's imagine that you ask your player, hey, like I'm noticing you're having some trouble being confident. Am I right? Like, am I reading this correctly? And your player has a conversation with you that goes a different way and says, oh, you know what? I really do want to contribute, but my ideas suck and I'm stupid and everyone hates me. That's different, right? Because that's not about role-playing games. Again, we're going to that place where you're acknowledging you're not this person's therapist. You're looking at the tip of a larger iceberg, which I think that we all have, right? We all have personal stuff that comes up in games. Some people have trouble with certain things in game, not because of the game, not because of the table, but because of their own personal stuff, which is what you're actually looking at in that case. And I think that you can address that in a couple of ways. First, by being transparent, by saying, hey, like, I want to help you. I would like to help. Do you want my help? Would you like to get better at this? Would you like to feel better? They might say, nah, no thank you. But if they're interested, a supportive group stating outright that it is a space where ideas are meant to just kind of come out in an improvised way, and that her contribution is valued, whether or not she's confident in it, is an important start. To be able to say, look, whatever idea you come up with, I don't care how smart or dumb it is, it's valid, it's real, we're going to take it seriously, right? Then back it up. Don't make jokes. Don't tease them. Give this person some room to get confident, to just test those waters if it's something they want, right? Confirm that that's the case. They want to improve. They want more room to get confident. Play a game that does this gently, like Dungeon World. Do not play a game that does this really aggressively. This person should not be subjected to Polaris or fiasco, or a game in which everyone stares at them waiting for the next big important decision to get made. Do not play those kinds of games. Play a game where you can invite them gently. What I often do with players who are hesitant or new, I will give them specific prompts that come with options, right? When the prince reveals the sword of 7 glories, what do? Are you in awe? Are you afraid? Giving them a few options instead of just staring at them and saying, what now, can be helpful, because if your player can't just make something up, you're giving them little nudges in a direction. It may be the right direction. They may hate all their options. But as you go, you can introduce or something else to that, right? Watch me GM award-winning tabletop role-playing game Dungeon World for people who've never played RPGs before. If you've ever watched me do this, and I do it a lot, you'll note that my questions are very rarely, who is this? What does that mean? And more, is it this thing or is it that thing? Or is it a different thing, right? Confidence is a thing that is often tied up in, as you pointed out, a lot of other stuff. Socialized behavior, comfort with the venue, comfort with the people in which confidence is expected of us. And improvisation and creativity are hard, and confidence when you're trying to get into it can be incredibly fragile. I'll tell you this. Let me give you an example for me, because I think it's easy to look at someone and say like, oh, Adam, you're so familiar and confident, and certainly you've never had any bad times with people shitting on your confidence. The worst experience, literally the worst experience I have ever had with a role-playing group, ever, in my entire life. The only time I ever straight up just quit a game and stopped playing with a group of people was when I was at the table as a player making a choice for my character. I just made a decision to do something with my character. I had another player literally say to me, that's so stupid. Can't you think of a more interesting thing to do? Like, I totally shut down for the rest of the session and I left. And I was like, I can't play with you people anymore. Like, you have ruined this game for me. That is an incredibly shitty thing to say to a person. And even if that kind of shit isn't happening at your table, we need not be bitten by the cobra to fear its fangs, right? We can have anxiety about the potential of a thing happening, even if it never has. So here's where you start. Create for this player a safe and positive space by inviting people to engage in a way that feels good for them based on their explicit understanding of those things, right? Talk to this person, find out what they want, create a space that can invite them to engage in that way. Build trust among the group together and let it grow over time, right? Talk to the player and make sure that you're not saddling them with more creative input than your players want to be saddled with, right? Take it slow. Invite her to add what she feels comfortable adding. Apply patience, and then wait. That's all you can do, really, because as you said, you can't make this person a more confident person first. You have to use the game as a space to allow them to explore their own confidence building. It's hard. It's really hard, right? It's hard for them too. Like, she's having a rough time of it, I'm sure. Make sure that if you give this person authority, you do not betray it. And I don't just mean by like laughing at the dumb ideas they have, because your ideas are dumb too. Mine are, everybody's are. We all have stupid ideas that later we're like, oh, why did I make that happen? Why? That was dumb. It's fine. Let it exist. Just let all the dumb ideas happen. If you say, what are elves like in this world? And they say something you don't like or doesn't fit with your ideas, it's too fucking late. You already asked. So do not cajole them. Don't convince them to change it. Don't undermine it. Don't let anybody else like step back on that stuff. If you give away your power Expect it to be used in ways that feel weird or boring or stupid to you. You gave it away. Shut up. I'm not saying you're not doing that. I'm just saying, like, this is the thing, right? If you want to give your players more narrative authority, they're going to come up with dumb ideas. But that's okay, because so will you. You have to trust this person, and you have to let them trust you. Other than that, it's just a matter of time, right? Confidence emerges from certainty. Certainty comes from preparedness, familiarity, and practice. And as Chad has pointed out, if you want to see me doing this, watch me play games with Jesse Cox. Because Jesse is so unafraid of saying just the first thing that comes to mind. The way that I handle him and the way that I do that is by just saying, fuck yes. Yes, whatever stupid idea you have, I'm all in. I am going to dive in on that idea. Hackerjackers? Sure. Bounty hunter named Schloopin Boopin? Whatever. Yes, I'm gonna play chicken with your crazy ideas because I'm here to accept them. Right? I'm here to embrace them. And that's just how the game works, right? We may not all agree, but if you let somebody create, you have to support their creation. Full stop. And that's just how it goes, right? Get to a place where you feel more comfortable just letting them make up weird, dumb stuff like high stakes tiddlywink games. It's great. It's a great experience as a GM. Players who are willing to jump out into the world and just come up with stuff, you can see them. You can watch it on their face as they improvise, and they know they're saying stupid stuff. They're squinching their eyes, gritting their teeth, like they're waiting for a bomb to land. They're just like, oh, why did I say that? And now Adam's taking it seriously, and okay, it's real, and we're going to run with it, and then it becomes a part of your game. Don't be afraid of that. And teach your players by example. Be unafraid. Invite their ideas. And that's how it goes. It's going to work, right? It's going to become the tone of the game, and it's going to teach this person that she is allowed to make decisions. And you want that, right? That's what you want.
Hi, Adam. I'm running my first campaign as a DM in D&D 5e, and my players keep finding ways to evade whatever big bad or large conflict I have set up to get in their way. I'm wondering how to create a sense of resolution regardless of their method of achieving their goals within these sections of the campaign. Thanks.
So, let me rephrase this to make sure I get the gist of it, or at least to rephrase the question to let you know what I'm going to answer. Because if I get this wrong, I'm answering a thing that isn't actually your question, and I've done a failure, and that's just where we're at. It sounds to me like your players don't want to come in direct conflict with the things that you, as the Dungeon Master, have put together to place between them and their goals. You want them to feel like they have accomplished something in your campaign, despite the fact that your players are pernicious weasels. You, Jasper, are a kind and gentle soul who deserves better than these penny ante villains. Now, let's talk about why this shit happens. In Dungeons & Dragons, specifically, players are rewarded for the nebulous accomplishment of overcoming encounters. Dungeon Masters spend time and energy assembling encounters, which are generally bad monster type things that act as an obstacle to the player's goals. If you want treasure, there is a dragon on top of it. If you want to cross the bridge of certainly lethal wind made of acid and fire and is also guarded by a troll of unusually bad temperament, probably because of all the acid in the fire, there's going to be, acid and fire and trolls and stuff. This is the function of D&D, but it's also where D&D short circuits, because often whatever we envision on the other side of Acid Fire Troll Bridge isn't actually the game's reward. The game's reward is the experience points that we are given for defeating the troll. Even treasure is a secondary reward, because all loot fundamentally does in Dungeons & Dragons is one of two things. It makes us better at killing or worse at dying. Which, of course, allows for faster and more certain acquisition of experience points. Ergo, when players pursue a non-XP related goal, the obstacles the GM comes up with and the game rewards the players get for overcoming can be seen as an inconvenience, right? An engagement in which the risk-reward math gets all fucked up when we stop looking at XP as a reward. And that, my friends, is how you get weasels. A weasel is the sort of player who doesn't engage the reward structure of the game, and in fact, attempts to avoid, ignore, or otherwise utterly disengage from it for the sake of keeping their character safe. A weasel will do everything in their power not to have to risk their character's life or health, or in many cases, even the chance of their character looking foolish. A weasel will attempt to slink by your challenges, avoid your encounters, and as a result, gain nothing materially by way of the game. A weasel will look at all of the encounters they never had to have in the way a brave warrior might look at a list of their defeated foes. Oh, the weasel will exclaim, how wonderful it was when we didn't fight the dragon, nor did we challenge King Glorfrug of the dwarves. And wasn't it fantastic, the way we just didn't go to the ruins of Fargelforth even at all? A weasel, in short, makes for a shit adventurer, and often ends up playing a game of D&D in bad faith. Playing D&D, in fact, playing most role-playing games means engaging in decision-making. Decision-making with consequence. Even the loosest interpretation of overcoming an encounter requires that you engage it in some fashion, right? Even if you use milestone XP, must one not overcome difficulties and challenges to accomplish those milestones? So what I think ought to be done here, Jasper, is a discussion with your group about the nature of choice. I would first sit down with these would-be weasels and say, hey, so I notice you're trying really fucking hard not to engage with the challenging stuff that might endanger your characters. They may see this, if these players are indeed the weaselly fuckers I think they might be, as a recognition of their efforts. They might see a sort of achievement in never having to make a roll, or never taking damage, or never having an even unpolite, risky conversation with an NPC. Now, this isn't to say that a stealthy approach isn't interesting, or warranted, or exciting, because what's more fun than a high-stakes attempt to sneak past danger, right? We play stealth games for a reason. That's tense. Horror movies are full of those moments of avoidance with consequence. That is to say that playing the avoidance game means avoiding conflict. This is like, weasels don't even play the stealth game. Weasels play the game where they do not even get involved in the opportunity to get caught. Weasels don't want to be in danger at all. The avoidance game means avoiding conflict, which means avoiding what makes the game fun. Meaningful stakes, things that matter. If your players are so averse to challenge or danger, it may be possible that a game of lesser stakes is what they ought to play, right? D&D may just not be for them. This isn't even about fighting or not fighting. It's about taking risks. D&D not being for them may not even be a slight, right? These weasels may not in fact be weasels at all. They might just be people who want to play a game in which their character doesn't come under very direct threat. They may want to play a game where they just get what they want most of the time, and they don't really have to be scared that they'll be embarrassed by failure. I am not sure what role-playing game will satisfy them. I think maybe free market might be an okay fit. Maybe you, chat, YouTube comments, maybe you have some ideas about games that play to weasels. But I don't think D&D is the game for them. And no matter what all of the pre-nonsense stuff, the pre-rules nonsense stuff in role-playing games has to say, you can indeed win and lose at D&D. To win, you risk loss. And that's the nature of Dungeons & Dragons. I think the thing here is that, there are degrees of weaselness, right? They may only weasel out of things they think they can lose. They may have no problem fighting lesser foes. Handful of goblins? No problem. They may weasel out only of big challenges, which is fine to a degree. But Dungeons & Dragons is called Dungeons & Dragons, not, to quote my dear friend Distracted Elf, Dungeons & Dragons and pissing your pants and running away. So I feel, to answer your actual question, which is to say, how do I make this game feel like things are resolving when players expend most of their efforts avoiding my shit? A group of players that does nothing to alter the fate of the world around them, a group of players who disengage from conflict, is an offer crafted of purest gold to the game master to fuck with them and all the things they love. If you present them with a chance to go toe-to-toe with the Orcish War Queen, and they avoid her, you let the War Queen burn down the towns and villages of the Borderlands. If they don't want to take advantage of that opportunity, you give the War Queen what she desires. If you give them a chance to win the Sword of Mopril, which is said to be the only weapon capable of ending the cursed lineage of the family of chains, and they just nope out of the conflict that's going to be required to get the sword, well, shit, the family gets their hands on the sword, and now who's going to stop them? Such begins a new dark age of blood and terror. When I GM, I play using fronts. You can find fronts applied to a fantasy setting in Dungeon World. Go look it up. Just look up Dungeon World. It's free. The text is free on the internet. Go look it up. I use those in Dungeons and Dragons because I want my games to feel like a pressure cooker, right? I want to say the world wants what it wants and then tick those down, right? As the players choose what plates to keep spinning. If they ignore a front, it grows stronger, bigger, bleaker, darker. But really what it does is push the world away from the player's agency towards what somebody else wants, right? If you do nothing, all you are doing is beginning the age of the weasel. Evil Jaffa in chat points out a great example of this. At the beginning of Spider-Man, Peter Parker was a motherfucking weasel. Peter Parker let that criminal run right by him. Because, I don't want to engage with this encounter. I'm just going to let it go. Then old Pete gets home and, uh-oh, what happened, Uncle Ben? You're dead. That's right. That's what you get, Peter Parker. Are you going to be Spider-Man? Or are you just going to weasel your whole fucking life? No. Be Spider-Man. That's what the game is about. It's about being fucking Spider-Man. Not being weasel-ass Peter Parker. So it sounds to me like when the shit hits the fan, when the chips are all in, your players tend to avoid conflict because they're scared of being Spider-Man. So you need to go after Uncle Ben, right? Keep spinning the world, right? What you can know about your game is the direction that the world is spinning and show that happening in the world at large. But also, like, talk to your players, right? Don't let any of that advice override the fact that maybe you should just talk to your players and be like, yo, D&D is a game of action. That's why we reward XP for doing shit. We don't award XP for not doing shit. This is a not doing shit game. You can help them make sure that they are interested in being get shit done Spider-Man and not, you know, fucking weasels. No weasels. Spider-Man. That got weird.
Hi Adam, my question is this. Is it okay to do fan edits or hack a revision of an RPG because I feel it needs some clarity and tidying up? As if I were to apply the good game, bad game criteria, I'd say initially it is probably a bad game. And how do you bring this up with a designer? Oh, I like your game, but feel like XYZ needs some clarity revision. Part of me feels like it might be a little bit of a slap in the face for them, especially if you think the material would be beneficial to others to play this RPG.
So first of all, climber clappers or climber clappers. First of all, listen, some game designers deserve to get slapped in the face. Other game designers probably wouldn't mind it if you slap them in the face. But let's talk about this as a thing about fan edits and this kind of design space. Full warning, I'm like hella biased because I am a game designer. So this practice is a super common thing in a lot of design disciplines. We see this especially in graphic design, right? It can be a common part of an application for a project or for a job to offer up like a redesign of a website, a product, magazine layout, right? Really common behavior in music too. Much beloved is the remix or the cover song. The behavior of, I took a thing that I loved and I made something different with it is as old as creativity itself. So, like, I don't think that it's unreasonable or unwarranted or some kind of special no-no to take a game that you like but think is flawed and remix it so that it makes more sense, or to do a thing you don't quite see it doing already. What turns this into a dick move is how you present it. There's a really big difference between, hey, I wrote a blog post suggesting some ways that I would improve on this game I like if I were this game's editor, which I am not. Some fan thoughts, right? Big difference between blog post and dear game designer, your game fucking blows, so I redesigned it because you're trash. Here are all the reasons in which it blows. As with all things, there's a nuance. And I think it's really important to remember that to create anything takes a remarkable and intense amount of labor, both visible and invisible. So when someone comes along and says, I, as an individual you do not know, have redesigned your terrible thing, which took you a long time, and you ostensibly worked a great deal on, and which I have now made better, which is the opinion of me, this one person you've never met. It's a bit shitty, isn't it? If somebody emailed me and said, hey, so I'm going to redesign Dungeon World because X, Y, and Z all suck, I might reply, hello, person. Glad you're interested in Dungeon World enough to want to put some work into it. The game and its text are available for license under these specific parameters. Knock yourself out. What I wouldn't write in my email, but what I would probably think is, boy, what a douchebag. Because Dungeon World took hundreds of hours of work, playtesting, revision, more work. It takes dedication and effort to make a thing, to produce the thing, to publish and support the thing. And because one person's opinion about how a game should be factors about as much as you might expect against all the other opinions and efforts that go into making the thing, you can see how it might be difficult. We made Dungeon World Creative Commons licensed because I want people to be able to remix elements of it. I want people to be able to do things their own way with what we set up. And this has led to some really cool stuff, right? Format presentations, like the HTML versions of the game. There's a short form, like crib notes version of the game called Truncheon World that I personally really like. There's a lot of cool foreign translations of the game. There are hacks. There's new material. In theory, according to the license, someone could take the text and do absolutely zero game design, repurpose the text, and present it for sale in a different format, paying us nothing but the required attribution. If someone did that, I would probably go on record calling it out as a dick move. I would say, yes, this is legal. You are legally allowed to do this. But like, dick move. Because I think it's crazy arrogant, right? And yes, sometimes brilliant designers are super arrogant. That's just how it goes. Sometimes people have what they think are great ideas, and there are always improvements to be made, but like, this is a really fucked up way to give feedback. For me, and I think this is true of most designers, I don't see my game as like a done forever deal. Just because we published it and made it into a book doesn't mean that it's finished forever, right? We're not currently actively working on a second edition, but if we do, we'll have all these lessons and ideas that developed over time and with feedback from all sorts of people. But I can tell you this, no matter how much you love this game, no matter how much you think that you understand it better than the designer, no matter how much you think you understand it better than the text, no one person, no matter how talented, is just going to single-handedly fix the game. I think this kind of myopia is super common. I think this idea that if a problem with a game seems really clear and obvious to us, it should just be clear and obvious to everyone else, right? That if we can just fix a game, everyone would finally appreciate it and understand it and agree with us. Except that anyone who's actually designed a game knows that's not how it goes. If you're having this urge to like repair and deliver your fan edit of a game that's already published, you're too late. Like, you missed the boat. It's too late. The game's done. Suggesting changes for a future edition might be part of being a good fan. Posting your ideas to a greater community for discussion, also really cool. No designer on Earth or any other planet should ever be afraid of critique and analysis because they are forms of engagement. I love reading posts where people are like, here's all the shit I would change about Dungeon World. Because most of the time, those posts aren't fuck you Dungeon World. They're I love Dungeon World, but here's the stuff I don't love so much. In the same way that I love 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I love it, but I change things about it. I change the stuff I don't love. And that's fine. I love that kind of stuff. Critique and analysis. It's a form of caring about a game. straight up just redoing the game because you have the hubris to imagine that you can single-handedly fix it is doing a disservice to the work that it took to make that game. And frankly, it's a waste of talent that could be spent elsewhere. Like making your own game. Covering a popular song and putting your own spin on it might be a good way to warm up to the idea of being in a band. Right? Drawing fan art is a good way to practice your skills as an artist if you're not confident in creating your own characters. Redesigning elements of a game to work differently is a really cool way to engage with design, right? Hacking games is a fantastic first step towards fully designing a thing. But in the end, that energy is best used making something new. Because when it comes down to it, if I'm using up all my energy making the Adam Koebel edit of GURPS, I'm still just making GURPS. And Steve Jackson Games is not paying me. I could use that energy elsewhere. I could serve the community with my ideas instead of taking those ideas to the developer and saying like, here's 27,000 things you should fix about your game because it's broken and wrong. Now, I mean, obviously I have some bias on this stuff because I'm both a hacker in the sense that Dungeon World is my way to access the things that I loved about D&D and Apocalypse World, and a designer in the sense that Dungeon World took a shit ton of effort and work, and we already have a ton of people telling us all the ways the game sucks, or all the ways the games are rad, and we took all of that stuff into account. It's called playtesting. I think that fan edits and hacks and redesigns and shit are all really cool, but how you present them is going to be the thing. Like, don't be a dirtbag about it. I don't know any designer that's going to respond positively to the thing that you made sucks, so I fixed it for you. But making your own thing connected to theirs as a fan is really cool. I love everything that takes Dungeon World in new or weird or unexpected directions. Chances are pretty good that the insight that you have isn't brand new to the person who made the game you're trying to fix. Chances are pretty good they had an editor, I hope, and they did some playtesting, please God. And now it's all too late for that. You'd be better served using your understanding of the game to make something new, like a tutorial or a how-to-play guide. Some fans did this for Dungeon World, right? There's it's your first time playing Dungeon World, or like, things we have learned from playing Dungeon World. Do not act like you are an expert on a game someone else made more so than they are, right? Be a fan, be an engaged fan, be someone who loves the thing, and speak to other fans. I get the need, obviously, to edit, hack, remix. There is so much space for that cool stuff, but you have to understand your goal. It is too late to fix the game that you want to fix, but use that energy, use that passion, use that design know-how to make something new for the game, right? Or if you're given the opportunity and invited to participate in the process, that's when you can. Uninvited critique can often be seen as crass and weird because it is, right? Get involved in a game early on. Playtest. Get in there because that stuff is what matters, right? Playtesting is when all of this stuff is invited. Playtesting is when we say, find all the things that you hate about our game and tell us so that we can understand them better. So all of that stuff obviously is just my 2 cents. Maybe there are game designers that like getting slapped in the face who invite you to email them and say, Kevin Symbieta, here are the 27 reasons that I hate your game. I'm sorry, I love your game, but this is why it sucks and you are terrible. I have presented my 300-page PDF variant, Adam Koebel edition of Rifts. Please feel free to publish this at your leisure, right? Be a fan. Give a shit, right? If you love a game, recognize its flaws, talk about them, engage with other people, but do it on the level with them. Do not go back channel to the designer and say, well, all these other plebs, I don't need to talk to them. I'm going to go straight to the source. I'm going to tell you how to fix your game. These are just my 2 cents. Maybe you'd get a different answer from a different designer. Community engagement is more important to me than direct feedback about all the ways that we fucked up, except if we're playtesting. If we're playtesting, go to town. So that's what I think. It's a tricky thing. Feedback is a tricky thing, especially because we are in a culture where fandom demands adherence. Fandom demands obsession, which is weird. Critique is great. I love it. And that's why we made Dungeon World Creative Commons. Make your own fucking version of Dungeon World. Just make it different. Don't just like change the layout. Do something not boring. You have my permission. That's what the license is for. So this has been episode 64. This is episode 64 of Office Hours. The GM and sometimes game design and sometimes relationships by way of role-playing games call-in advice show. Like I said at the top of the show, you can get involved by going to www.adam-koble.com. Click the Office Hours link, fill out the form, record your voice or don't. Just tell me that you didn't record it and I'll record it for you. All right? Submit your questions. I love them. I want them. Feed me your questions. Do it. We'll be back next time with more questions from you, my beloved audience. Go play role-playing games. Go have relationships with your players. Talk to them. Learn the rules. Have a good time. All right? All right. Bye for now, everybody. See you next time.